So you finally got a home server. And now you're running services, APIs, and your own custom website that shows the nearest location of Mountain Dew Baja Blast. So you've got all the essentials. And now you want to properly expose them to the outside world. But getting SSL certificates set up with the proper security is just a pain. Trust me, I've been there. It's not fun. Luckily, today I'm going to show you an easy way to get this all set up without having to be some type of SSL or TLS security expert. Let's check it out. Okay, to get this all done, we're going to need three things. First off, you're going to need a domain name, whether that's .com, .net, .gov. Whether you purchase that through Google Domains like I do, or through GoDaddy, or through whoever. As long as they provide the ability to change your name servers, you're good. Second, you're going to need a Cloudflare account. Now, you don't necessarily need a Cloudflare account to do this entire setup. It's just what I use, and it's free, and I found it extremely useful. So if you want to follow this guide, just set up a Cloudflare account. And third, you must be running pfSense. So whether that's on a dedicated Netgate box like I'm using, or you're using your own hardware, either way, as long as you're running pfSense, you're good to go. All right, so I mentioned before you have to acquire a domain, and that I am using Google Domains to purchase my domain name. So for this demo, I am using my domain name, MrBalloonHands.com. If you know what Mr. Balloon Hands is from, comment below. Somebody out there's got to know. So I've done that. It's $12 for a year. It's not expensive, so I just basically purchased this one for the sole purpose of this demo. Once you have your domain, you can now go to the Cloudflare setup. So what you're going to do is go to cloudflare.com, create an account if you don't already have one, and then go to Add Site. All it's going to do is ask for the site that you want to set up. In my case, it's MrBalloonHands.com. And once you do that, Cloudflare is going to give you the name of 2 name servers that you need to change in your domain register. So in my case, that's Google Domains. So what you have to do is go back, go to DNS, and this will be different depending on who you purchased your domain through, but a lot of them have the same type of layout. Just go to where it says DNS and change your name servers. So here I would go to Manage Name Servers. Here are the 2 that were provided to me by Cloudflare. I simply change them here and click Save. Then once you do that, there'll be a button down here for Cloudflare to update your name servers. Click on that. It can take somewhere between, I've seen it happen in 5 minutes, and it's taken up to about 12 hours for me. So while we're waiting on that, we can jump into pfSense and do all the setups that we need to do there. So in pfSense, we are going to be using 2 packages, ACME and HAProxy. So ACME is going to be used to provide the certificates for our services, free of charge, of course. And HAProxy is going to be our reverse proxy. That's basically going to be like the bouncer at the club, basically checking everybody's ID and making sure that they're allowed to come in and leave. Bouncers don't really check your ID to leave, but in this scenario, the bouncer checks your ID to leave. So the way to set those up is extremely easy. Just go to System and go to your package manager. And in there, you will be able to go to available packages and search for both HAProxy, download that, as well as ACME. I've already done that, so if I go to installed packages, you'll see that I have both ACME and HAProxy already installed. Once those are installed, go to Services, and we will deal with ACME certificates first. Obviously, I have services running already and I have certificates set up, but when you go here, it will be blank. And the first thing you're going to do is go to Account Keys and set up an ACME account within pfSense. So to do that, you just go in here and click on Add. I'll show you my configuration. It's extremely straightforward. Give it a name, a description, and the ACME server you want to use. You can use staging, you can use production. It doesn't really make that big of a difference. I'm using the production server, so if you want to use that, go ahead. Put in your email address that you want to use to register with, and click Create Account Key. And when you do that, it will populate a new account key here for you. and then click Register ACME Account Key. It'll send you an email, and then you can go through the process of registering. Once you do that, click Save, and you will see something similar to what I have, meaning that you now have an account key for ACME. Step 2, create a client certificate. This is going to be used for essentially each service you want to expose to the web. Now you can create wildcard certificates, but I just create one for each service that I use. And depending on your use case, you may want to do the same. So you can see I have quite a few, but we're going to add a brand new one. And in this demo, I'm just going to be exposing Nextcloud. I know that's a popular use case because people want to use Nextcloud as obviously a cloud-based storage solution. And the benefit of cloud-based storage solutions is that you can access them outside of your network. So then I already have one set up, so we'll call this one Nextcloud 2. Status active. This is where you'll select that ACME account key that you just created. So I only have one, that was easy. And go down here in the domain SAN list. This is where you're gonna have to enter your first real information. Now, mode is gonna be enabled. Domain name, that is going to be what you want the address of this service to be, followed by the domain that you purchased. So in my case, I just want this to be nextcloud.mrballoonhands.com. And the method you want to validate with. Now, there are a lot of options here. This is one of the benefits of using Cloudflare. It provides you an easy API plugin to validate against Cloudflare. And you can see through this list, there are many different ways you can do it. But for this demo, we are using Cloudflare. So go ahead and select DNS Cloudflare. It's going to ask for a bunch of information here, and you're going to want to populate that based on your Cloudflare account. For email, that's straightforward. It's the email you use to register. Account ID and zone ID, those can be easily found over here. So I would copy zone ID. I would copy account ID. Then for token and key, those can be found by accessing your API screen within Cloudflare. So go back to Cloudflare, and right under here, you'll see a link for Get Your API Token. Click on that. Now, I've already created a couple of API tokens. I've created a few just because when you create it, I don't think there's a way to go back and see the token, so make sure you copy it into a safe place. Just go ahead and create a token, follow the same scheme I have, edit zone DNS, permissions, zone DNS, and for all zones. Now, if you have multiple sites set up in Cloudflare, you might want to restrict this to certain zones, but I don't care. I can have access to all zones. And API keys is right underneath. Just use your global API key. View that. Now, obviously, I'm not going to share that on the screen, so I'm going to enter that information here and then scroll down. So let me do that. Okay, and we don't touch any of the rest of the settings. Click Save, and you will see this created. Now, what you're going to want to do is click Issue/Renew. And what this is going to do is actually issue the certificate for you. And it takes between 30 seconds and a minute, so we are going to let it do its thing. All right, if you answered everything correctly, you will get a nice green pop-up that says everything was successful. And if you scroll down and refresh, you will see that our Nextcloud 2 certificate has been renewed. All right, we are done with the ACME portion of this. Next, we have to move on to the HAProxy part. So same thing, we're going to services, scroll down to HAProxy. And again, you'll notice that I have stuff set up here already, but the first thing you're going to want to do is actually go into backend. And this is where you set up the actual backend connection to your service on your home network. So you can see I have quite a few set up already, but we are going to do our thing and add a new one. We will name this one Nextcloud 2. We're going to add an entry to this serverless table. Mode active, give it a name. So address and port. So this is going to be where on your home network does your service or website live. So for example, my Nextcloud service lives at IP address 10.0.0.33 at port 8282. And now this encrypt SSL box, you will leave that unchecked most of the time, but if you are connecting to a service that is already using HTTPS and maybe has its own self-signed certificate, make sure you have this checked. But in our case, it is not, so we will leave it unchecked. CA, we will select our ACME cert, CRL, none, client certificate. So This is where you will specify the certificate that you just created. Now, if I do the drop down, I should see my Nextcloud 2 certificate. There it is. All right, everything else is left blank. Now, you'll see there's a lot of options in here. I'm not going to go through everything. A lot of it you can just leave default. So, and to be honest, I'm not an expert on all this stuff, so a lot of this is over my head, but this is the configuration that works for me, and I am sure it'll work for you if you're running a very similar setup. So leave everything else as is, click Save, Apply Changes. Okay, I already noticed something that I didn't change. So for check, this is running an HTTP check. We are going to go back in and change this to none. If you want health checking, you can set this up, but I don't, so save, apply changes. All right, now you notice this is gray out. That is because we haven't connected it to any front end yet. So that's our next step, create a front end. So going to front end, you'll see I already have one created. So it's easier if I just go in and click edit here instead of creating a new one. You would click add, but in my case, we'll just walk through the one I already have created. So give it a name. I have it called Epic Spectrum. My server is an Epic based machine and it's running on the Spectrum WAN, whatever description you want, status active. For the table here, this is where you would specify which gateway you want to listen on. Now, most of you are just gonna set WAN address here like I have, but if you're running a dual WAN setup like I am, maybe you want this to be exposed to a specific WAN or specific gateway. Here's where you would select it, but in our case, we just set it to WAN. Port 443 for HTTPS. Now, if you want to expose a different one, go ahead, but for most cases, just use port 443. Enable SSL offloading, and make sure type is HTTP, HTTPS offloading. Okay, now when you scroll down here, you are going to see a list of all your access controls. So this is where you'll specify what type of domain name you want to listen for coming in. So you see I have quite a few listed here with my actual domain. We're going to add the one we created. So in this case, again, we'll call it Nextcloud 2. This should be host matches. And we are going to do nextcloud.mrballoonhands.com. Scroll down to actions. Now we're going to add an entry here. And this is going to be where you specify the backend that you want to connect to. So click Use Backend, select the backend. You can see the Nextcloud 2 we just created. And this is where you specify the ACL name. So make sure this matches exactly what you entered up here. So Nextcloud, all lowercase 2. So next up is go down to SSL offloading, and here is where you can choose a certificate. Now, if you only have one service selected here, this is my first one that I created, so Nextcloud, but you have the ability to add additional certificates down here. So this can just be your default certificate. It can be whatever, it doesn't matter. As long as you have the other certificates entered down here, you're good. So we're going to add this to our additional certificates. And here we are, Nextcloud 2. Everything else is left as default. Click Save, Apply Changes. And now if we go back to backend, you will see that Nextcloud 2 is no longer grayed out. Okay, so hopefully by the time you've finished all that, maybe your Cloudflare stuff is done setting up and you will see a screen like mine. Great news, Cloudflare is now protecting your site. That means you are good to go. So what we're going to want to do is go into DNS and add a record. So it's going to be a type A, so an A record. The name is going to be just the first part of the name of the domain you want to use. So in our example, remember we're using nextcloud.mrballoonhands.com. So we would simply just type Nextcloud here. And you'll see it gives us an example right above, the entire domain. And the IPv4 address is the public IP address for your WAN. So you can get this by searching what is my IP on Google, or you can go back to pfSense and get it from your dashboard. Now, obviously I have this grayed out right now because I don't want you perverts trying to hack into my network. So that record should be created, and the next step is to scroll up and go to SSL/TLS and set this to flexible. Now you can read up on all the other configurations. I found that flexible works best for this setup. Now, depending on what you have set up on your home network, you may want to use full or full strict, but in this case, just use flexible. It works perfectly fine. And we are done with Cloudflare. Now, we are nearly done. And if we go back to pfSense, one of the last steps is to make sure that the firewall rule has been created for your WAN. So on the WAN, you can see I have 443 open for all sources, all ports, and this should be created automatically when you create that front end in HAProxy, but if it doesn't, just make sure this port is exposed on the network you specify as your gateway. So we selected WAN, so make sure it's open on your WAN. Okay, so if we did everything correctly, if we go to nextcloud.mrballoonhands.com, you'll see this is my Nextcloud server running on my home server, and you can see it's using HTTPS and it is secure using the certificates we provided. So we're good to go. Nextcloud running securely on our home server, exposed to the big bad internet. Go to services and dynamic DNS, and you'll want to set this up so that anytime your public IP changes, pfSense will automatically update that on all your A records in Cloudflare. So you can see I have all mine set up already to do that, and it's extremely simple. Just go to add, select the service Cloudflare. It's just going to ask for your username and password to that account and what host name you want to update. And it's just going to run periodically, and if your public IP ever changes, it'll make sure to update your A records on Cloudflare so that you're not stuck with broken web pages just because your public IP changed at your house. So I recommend doing this to save you some headache down the line if you forget to check this. That's it. I hope this worked for you guys. It's definitely worked for me. It saved me a lot of headache of going through a lot of other more complicated channels of setting up SSL encryption on a lot of my services. So let me know down in the comments how you have SSL set up on your home server, and if you use this, let me know if it worked out for you. But that's it. Drop a like below. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this, and I will see you in the next one.